Hey people, here we are, Filmmakers, sort of episode 1, because this is the first one going out under the new umbrella of Filmmakers instead of Filmmaker Fridays. But there are actually 4 early episodes that I've created, and I will restream those over here so that people who subscribe to this YouTube channel or the Facebook page will be able to get access to those episodes too, because there's some great material there from a mixed bag of producers, directors, actors, both big and small. Now, today I am extra excited and completely ready to nerd out because we've got Don Bies, hopefully Bies, I'm not sure on the pronunciation there, we'll have to confirm, but Don has literally worked on a very large portion of my favourite movies of all time. So, hence the Empire Strikes Back t-shirt. I thought, in for a penny, in for a pound. So it's going to be, really exciting to talk to him and to hear what it was like to be, on the set, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, the prequels, and Ghostbusters 2. The list goes on. Check it out on IMDb. It's really quite amazing. And in more recent times, he's been lending his hand to doing some directing, producing, editing. Picked up a number of awards for a short horror flick that we'll have a look at the preview for soon. But rather than me ramble on, I'm sure everybody's more excited to hear what Don has to say. So let's get him on here.
Hey, Brad.
G'day, mate.
How you doing?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good. I got my Bundaberg lemon, lime, and bitters in honor of my Australian friends.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So I'm interested to dig into the story of how you met your wife. I don't know. Was that related to the Pirates of the Caribbean work?
No, I was acting as the Lucasfilm archivist at the time, working on a huge exhibition of models and stuff that was going to go to Japan, and I got a call from the head of Star Walking, which is based in Melbourne, and they were looking for someone to replace Howard Kazanjian, who was their original guest, and who backed out at the last minute. So I was recommended, and I figured, hey, I'd go to Australia for a weekend.
Yeah.
And my wife was handling PR for that. And, well, she wasn't my wife at that point. We met at that point. So.
Yeah. Very good. So now, Don, did I butcher your last name? Probably, because I had 2 goes, so one's got to be wrong.
Bees.
Bees, right. Yeah. And what's the heritage of that? What's your lineage?
It's Polish, actually. I just found out a few years ago it's demon. So, hey.
There you go. Now, look, for people who don't know who you are, perhaps we could start with you giving, I guess, a little bit of an intro on to, who you are and I guess what you have mostly done in your career and then what you're doing now.
I actually started in 1985 for the movie The Fly, the Jeff Goldblum, David Cronenberg film. I was on the makeup effects crew for that. And I did mainly mechanical design. I helped make the big thing that he turned into at the end, and several smaller puppets that got cut along the way.
Right.
But that was 1985. That was my first film. I grew up in Chicago, and I did some theater there. And I just always knew I wanted to be in film. So I found out about the job that was happening at Chris Wayless Incorporated, which is who did Gremlins and Enemy Mine prior to The Fly.
Yeah.
And so I sent in a portfolio, and Chris hired me over the phone, and I drove out to California and been out here ever since.
So exciting. So tell me how that started. I'm always really interested to find out, and particularly in this field, and I think, particularly anybody who is an admirer of a lot of the films that you have been in will probably have, a similar interest in how does somebody get in the door, and has it radically changed from when you started to how it is today?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, first of all, the kind of work that I did doesn't really. There's not a lot of places to do it. There's a few places in Los Angeles that still do it, and I know there's actually a couple makeup effects houses in Sydney, actually, and Melbourne. But here, it's mainly out Los Angeles, and so I'm in the north in California, north of San Francisco, and there were a number of effects houses. There's, of course, Industrial Light and Magic, which is what I worked at a lot, and Chris Wayless Incorporated, which doesn't exist anymore either. And Chris was a spinoff from ILM because he did Raiders of the Lost Ark and Dragon Slayer at ILM. So at the time, it was, if you had a portfolio of work, you just did it as a hobby at home, which is what I did. You just submitted it, and when they were hiring on a big project, you're lucky enough to get in, you got in. Now everything's more digital, so you have to have a reel, and it's a little different. We when all the effects places that I worked at was a group of people that were like-minded and wanting to do that kind of work. Now I think you're a smaller cog in a much bigger machine. We were kind of all generalists at the time, where we could do a bunch of different things. But now we see the way CG is constructed. Some people are modelers, some people are painters, some people are compositors, that sort of thing. So, so you have to kind of tailor for what you want to be in.
Yeah. And as far as the portfolio goes, what does that look like? Because I'm wondering what somebody may have done, before they came into it. So would it be that they perhaps worked in some other field of doing makeup, or that they, let's say it was practical effects, that they've got a background of making models and creating things, or modifying scratch building, or kit bashing, that sort of thing?
Yeah, a lot of portfolios I'd seen at the time. Well, certainly my portfolio, I thought I was going to do makeup effects. I was, in love with makeup monsters and movies, Frankenstein and Planet of the Apes and King Kong and that sort of stuff. So I was really into that. So I was into sculpting, and I was into like I said, I thought I was going to be a makeup artist. So my portfolio had a bunch of makeup in it, but it also had some mechanical stuff. I built my own R2D2 when I was in high school. Star Wars came out, so I had that in there, and I had a couple of other mechanical things that I built. I was also set designing for theater and prop making and that sort of stuff. So all that was included in a portfolio, just to show that I could do anything. Hire me for anything. It was kind of what the thing was. And so when Chris looked at it, he kind of looked past my makeup stuff, because that was taken care of. And to be honest with you, I wasn't that good at the makeup aspect. And he was asking me more about my mechanical skills, because that's where they were really lacking. They were really looking for somebody that could do, building mechanisms for puppets and that sort of things.
Yeah. So the R2D2 that you built, was it a life-size R2D2?
Yeah, it was full size. It was radio controlled, made noises and all that sort of stuff. It was, a little crudely built at the time, but I based it all around the dome. The only thing I could find for the dome that would work was the top of the garbage bin that had one of those dome shaped with a little door that flapped. And so it was at my high school, and I told a friend I'd give him a ride home if he steals it for me, and he did.
The bin.
he just the top. The top.
Yeah.
And I took that and I made the head of R2 around, and then from that I based the dimensions of the rest of the body. So,
wow, that's awesome. I definitely think that's one way, and that explains. Because I was thinking, you were involved. Looks like you were kind of involved with R2D2 through 5 movies to the count that I found, and I was wondering what the story was with the first one. So you essentially saw the original Star Wars. Loved that, and then created your own R2D2 from there.
Yeah. I didn't start. You mentioned in the opening that I worked on Empire and Jedi. I worked on the special editions, so I didn't work on the originals.
Okay.
But when I was in California, and I met a guy that was doing the R2 appearances for public appearances, personal appearances.
Right.
And he got a job working for Disney as an Imagineer. So they needed somebody to replace him. And because I had this experience not only with radio control, but I had also built my own R2, they asked me to come in and talk to him. I did. They asked me to drive R2 around, and I didn't bump into anything, and they hired me. So that was in 1987. So I started working with R2 in 1987.
Wow. That's awesome. So by 87, had all of those three original movies been out at that stage? Was Return of the Jedi been out?
Yeah, everything had been out. When I came to California, it was 2 years since Return of the Jedi had started, and ILM wasn't doing anything Star Wars. Certainly, Lucasfilm wasn't. And I think when I came out and I was working on The Fly, they were working on Howard the Duck.
Right.
And then in 87, the same year I started working with R2, right before that, a good friend of mine, John Berg, who did the walkers for Empire Strikes Back, he was a stop motion animator.
Right.
I met him when I worked on The Fly, and he was heading up a crew to do some puppeteering for Witches of Eastwick, which is with Jack Nicholson and Cher and Michelle Pfeiffer. And they were doing the same effect shots at ILM, and they needed a whole team of puppeteers. I think it was 30 people they needed. So John asked me to come in on that crew. So I worked on that for about a week, just puppeteering. Puppeteering, it sounds very lofty, but it wasn't. My job was to pull a lever, and it made Jack Nicholson's tongue come out. So that was my job. But I had to pull it at the right time.
Yeah.
So that was my first job at ILM. And I continued doing a couple of films at CWI. I did Fly 2, a very bad horror film called The Kiss that we shot in Canada. I went on a location for that.
Yeah.
And then I got the job at the archives. I was doing the R2 stuff, and for other personal appearances, I would help with, Darth Vader needed to be somewhere, or Chewbacca, or C-3PO, or anything. And then I'm trying to remember the first film that ILM was, and it's like 89 or something. Oh, Ghostbusters 2. No, sorry, Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah, it's another classic.
And then right after that, I worked on Ghostbusters 2 for a little bit. So
that's awesome. What did you do with Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade?
Mainly, I was working on the Donovan Destruction, the guy that drinks from the wrong rail. So we had built there was a small crew of us, I think about 6 people, that had made this puppet that was mounted on a motion control system, so it could make all its movements. It was all mechanical to make all its movements of thrashing around and doing this, and could be completely repeatable. My job on it was to do all the vacuum suction. So they did it in 3 phases. They had 3 heads. One that was kind of somewhat normal looking, that went to a second stage version. And then we swapped out heads, and that took it from that version, a little bit more skeletal, to the next stage. And then that third stage was essentially a skull with plastic on it that was heated up and shriveled up. And they filmed all 3 of those in succession, and then they morphed them all together and made them all look like one seamless shot. So my job on it was there was a vacuum pulls on the face to suck the cheeks in, suck the eyeballs in, that sort of thing, in each of the phases of the head. So I worked on that, and then I did a couple of insert shots. I'm Indiana Jones in one shot when Hitler signs the Grail Diary. There's a body in the background of that. That's me as Indiana Jones. I also puppeteer the snake that pops out and scares River Phoenix at the beginning of the film, but it wasn't River Phoenix. It was just an insert shot. It was one of the local employees.
Yeah.
And that was sort of snake popping out of the water that I worked on. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, just it sounds like a lot of fun. Lots of people getting together to create something pretty exciting. Yeah. So from Indiana Jones and Ghostbusters 2, which is another favorite. What did you do on Ghostbusters 2?
That was doing simultaneously with Indiana Jones' Last Crusade, and they had a huge crew of doing creature work mainly and some model shots, but everyone was staffed up, they needed a shot of the ghost nanny flying through the sky to go pick up the baby and at the top of the building. And so we made a puppet, and I worked with actually a relatively famous stop motion animator that since passed away, a guy named Dave Allen. He headed up that crew.
Yeah.
And it was a puppet that was all rod activated. The model shop made a pram that the puppet was pushing, and we shot it on a motion control stage. But we didn't shoot it in motion control; we just shot it with a regular camera, and we were all puppeteering it with rods, making its head move and like it's flying around. We had string on the cake to make it, flutter in the wind. And so that was mainly that. I also did some time puppeteering some slime in the Slime River that was underneath New York City. There's a couple other things I think I worked on, just helping out, here and there if they needed something. So.
Yeah. How did you create the Slime River?
Well, I didn't work on that directly. Like I said, they had little things in there to stick up. But the slime was actually made of methicillin, which is a food thickener. It's, a lot of fast food places use it to thicken their milkshakes.
Gotcha.
Actually, they don't call them milkshakes. They call them shakes, I think, because there's no milk in them. And it's a food thickener. You heat it, it's a powder, you heat it up and mix it together, and then you could put it into food. And it creates this goopy mixture, very slippery. So they were making vats and vats of that stuff, and so that it could pour down and flow through the miniature set that they made. Yeah. They put paint dyes in it. They put pearlescent paint dyes in it so that it would have a glimmering, and then they had lit it from underneath. Years later, for episode 3, Mustafar, the lava flows and stuff was made the same way. It was with methicillin and lit from beneath to make it look like lava.
Yeah. No. And so when you're, I don't know the mechanics of these sorts of things, but did you have much opportunity at all to meet the actors when they were working on these different films?
Earlier on, and occasionally, we would. Like for Fly, Jeff Goldblum came in to do his life cast, so I got to meet him. But they shot the movie on location in Toronto, and I didn't go on location. And when we were working at ILM, mainly we were, we only did our work there. And unless the actors had to come up specifically to shoot blue screen, because at the time we had one of the largest blue screens in the country, I think in the world possibly. And so they would fly the actors up to do their blue screen shots at ILM. So Peter McNichol, who played the ghost nanny, we got to meet him. Particularly, he was interested in seeing what we were making a puppet of him.
Yeah.
Bill Murray and Ivan Reitman came up to do some shots. Bill Murray threw an impromptu party one night. He bought beer for everybody, and we had a party on the stage. And then on Indiana Jones Last Crusade, Harrison Ford came up for some shots, and I got to meet him.
Yeah.
And then, if you went on location, of course, for the shoot, like I did for the prequels, then we met everybody,
Yeah, that's awesome. Bill Murray is on wish list of people to meet or have a chat to. I have thrown a couple of random messages in his direction because, and this might just be a myth, I don't know, but I had heard that he either has a postal address or an email address that is open for people to directly contact him with, ideas or movies that they might have, or scripts and things like that. And if you get really lucky, then maybe he takes a shine to whatever you've got. Now, is he a naturally kind of funny, wacky sort of guy, or is that just he's been typecast into those sorts of roles?
Well, I only saw him for that one evening. He was pretty normal, but he was, pretty gregarious. He was, he kind of like, just, hey, let's have a party in here. And he got one of the PAs to come over, handed him a bunch of cash and said, go out and buy a bunch of beer. I remember it was pouring rain that night, and it was really, really horrible outside, but we were all inside having a good time. And something brought some radio. So he was very friendly. He was very outgoing. Other actors I got to work with, Robin Williams, really, really sweet guy. Wow. Very, very funny. Could be very funny. Could be very serious too. He wasn't moody. He just, he was not always on, but very, 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 very nice guy. And the entire cast of Star Wars films that we worked on was great. Everyone was really good there. So.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, Robin Williams definitely is great. He'll be one of these pictures in these posters that I that I put together here as a tribute to the movies that I've either really enjoyed or influenced me in some shape or form. Probably a lot of 80s. It's kind of, I guess, when I was in my youth and then going into teens and what have you. So what's been the favorite experience that you've had so far, or maybe even a few? I'd love it if you could share a little bit about those.
For the most part, I was really lucky. Pretty much everything I worked on, especially by working through ILM, we always had really good experiences. There was nothing ever bad. I mean, one movie that wasn't particularly fun to work on just because there was weird things going around at the time was a movie called Fire in the Sky. That it was about an alien abduction, and just the production was just kind of odd. I mean, everyone at ILM got along, but it was just a weird time. I think that was more to do with what was going on internally and that sort of thing. But generally, I think, I had a blast on Galaxy Quest, Pirates of the Caribbean movies, particularly the first one, was a lot of fun to work on. Probably my all-time favorite was the whole period of time working on it was Star Wars Episode 2. Now, I know everyone has different opinions of movies and stuff like that, so I'm not saying it was my favorite movie, but it was my favorite movie to work on. And that was because I got to fly, I came to Sydney. I worked in Sydney for 2.5 months on the film. I was an integral part of the shooting. I was on the call sheet. And, it was a lot of fun to be working on the set with everybody. Then we got to go on location. So I got to go to Italy, Tunisia, London. And I actually went to London twice because I did some pickup shots the following year. So, and then I was back at ILM working on it as a model maker. So for 2 years, it was just a lot of fun to, and a lot of work, and we had some really good times on it. So it was probably my favorite overall experience, but all of them have been great, and for different reasons. Fly was fun because it was my first one. But like I said, Pirates was great because it was interesting to build ships like they used to build ships. We built them like real ships, real pirate ships. So.
Yeah, I might pull up some of those images actually. Now that you're mentioning that. Bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
So test me here now.
That's all episode 2 stuff.
It's episode 2. Sorry.
That's actually a cut scene. That's when C-3PO gets his cladding. So that's Anthony Daniels actually puppeteering the puppet from episode 1 of C-3PO.
Yeah, which funnily enough, I just started watching with my daughter, so I'm hoping that if I do this, I don't know how that translates. No, it doesn't go as big as what I thought that was going to. I wanted a way just to skim through these. Yeah, we just started watching the very first episode. So she's seen the original series, so A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. So I kind of started her on that, and then I actually still haven't seen the last one, Jedi. So so I said, oh look, let's work our way through. So we're trying to do that, which is a little bit tricky because my wife's not really, she's not really a Star Wars fan at all. But
how old's your daughter?
I'm indoctrinating my daughter. She's 9. Yeah.
Good.
And she loved it. So it's really fun to share some of the classic movies like that. Back to the Future, we watched those together, and she really enjoyed those as well.
My son likes the films a lot better than my daughter. My son's 23. My daughter's going to be 18, so she's not as much into it. But we did the same thing before going to see Last Jedi. We watched all the films back to back. Just to get up to speed. So.
Yeah, it's the way to go. This looks very cool. I mean, that was another thing I wanted to ask you about is, I guess, the experience of being on set, and being like in these kind of corridors must be pretty a little bit out of this world. Feeling like you've actually really stepped right into the movie.
Oh yeah, this was really cool. That's from episode 3, and we actually brought R2. That's Justin Dick standing, and Matt Sloan kneeling, and I'm on the right there. Justin's from Melbourne, and Matt's from New Zealand.
Right.
But they were my crew on episode 3, and we brought R2 on set there and decided, hey, let's get a photo. There was nobody else around. There's other photos shooting on it, but we wanted to get our own private photo. And actually, also going to Tunisia for the shoot was great because we were actually on the original location from New Hope. So we were on episode 2. So we were at the ground level above ground is 300 miles away from the part where you go underneath.
Yeah. And
so we shot like I said, in the actual location where the original one was. And they rebuilt the dome, and they rebuilt other, the moisture evaporators in the distance, that sort of thing. And then it was great being there with Anthony Daniels because he was reminiscing. For him, it was a real flashback. Although interesting for him, it was cold when they were shooting. They were shooting in winter or late early spring, I guess. It was in March, and so when he would get in the costume, he said he was very cold because he's just wearing a leotard underneath, and the sun is reflecting off his suit, so he wasn't getting any heat. But on episode 2, that suit wasn't gold; it was multicolored. It was darker colors, and it was very hot, shooting in the middle, the height of summer. So it was a very different experience for him. And then we drove a couple hundred miles to the next location, which was below ground, which is Hotel City Tris. In reality, it's supposed to be the Lars Homestead in the films. And so that was great to walk around and explore because there's a lot more to it than you just see in the film. And we walked around because it's actually a hotel. It's a hotel, so.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's fascinating, that sort of thing. I think it's really cool. The movie magic just change from the one thing to another, but and the trickery, I guess, that takes place. So this is the same guy who played the role of C-3PO the whole time. Is that what?
Yeah, he's been in all the Star Wars films.
Yeah,
and he's even in Rogue One.
He probably needs that. Yeah.
He's in Solo.
The funny C-3PO walking. There's another shot. The green screen.
Yeah, this one was the last day of R2 shooting on episode 3.
Right.
So I asked the stills photographer, I says, would you take a picture, a group photo of us if everyone said yes? And he said, sure. He says, but you have to ask them. He says, if I ask them, they won't do it. So I went around to Ewan and Ian and Hayden and George, and I said, would you take a group photo? Would you mind? And they said, sure. So
yeah, that's great. Really good picture. So with R2, does it all of the noises added in post production, or does he make those little bleeps and beeps as you're controlling him?
No, not when we're shooting the film. It's all silent, and so it's kind of disconcerting, especially for Anthony, who's supposed to be talking to him. He'll say his line, and then he has to pretend like he's talking back. Sometimes Anthony's asked me to say I've made up R2 line, so I don't beep, but I'll say sure, whatever, give him some sort of response, so he's not reacting to nothing.
Yeah,
but yeah, all the sounds are put in there.
Yeah.
They had a heck of a time on the film because the reflection of the C-3PO, it just reflected everything, including the green screen and everything. So there was a lot of fixing in post where they had to, rotoscope around the green so that it didn't reflect. Or
yes.
The proper thing reflected. But I mean, the camera crew, everybody lights it. You see everything in C-3PO. It's like shooting into a mirror.
Just what you need. A rounded mirror right in the middle of your set.
If you watch carefully, particularly if you see it on a big screen, A New Hope, particularly in the desert, you see the camera crew in the back, in his chest, his face reflections. That's why it was so dirty in the original films, because they were trying to get rid of that as much as possible. And so we were doing tests. There was a picture there, I think from episode 2, where Justin and I are holding up C-3PO body, and they were doing a test to see what the reflectivity was. And finally, George just said, "No, let's shoot it all nice and shiny. It'll be the only time you see C-3PO the way you're supposed to see him," he said.
Yeah.
So they did that. They bit the bullet, decided to go for it, and they had some poor person at ILM had to get rid of all the reflections later on.
Yeah, that's I think that's the less desirable job, but again, probably somewhere where you got to start doing something to get you away. And this is a cool picture. You're inside a piece of some sort of fighter.
Yeah, it's Anakin or Obi-Wan's fighter. Well, probably Anakin's because R2's in it.
Yeah.
And a funny thing about that, I don't know if there's another photo shooting from the front straight on, but the wings were so thin on that, R2's feet actually dangled out underneath. So
I was trying to see if it was.
Yeah, there's more shots of this.
Well, that one you can sort of see.
No, he's not in it.
No. These look pretty cool as well. Like the coming down the walkway, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Green.
Yeah, that's what I'm supposed to be on Mustafar, and that's how they built to the set. Yeah, there's basically the walkway and then the ground plane. And so occasionally there might be a portion of a wall or something like that they would build. And in some cases they built the whole thing, like in episode 3, the General Grievous's ship that's crashing in the opening when they're rescuing the Emperor. That whole cockpit, that whole bridge set was all built, it was great to be on it. It was, obviously a little kid's dream, to be able to sit at controls and wiggle them and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that was actually a lot of fun because R2 was next to Ian McDermott, who played the Emperor.
Yeah.
And Ian was a very, very sweet, wonderful man. And R2 was next to him, and they were supposed to be reacting to one another. So it was fun to react to him. And I was right behind R2. I was literally sitting right next to Ian. But Ian would have some very funny takes looking at R2 and like rolling his eyes or whatever. R2 would be like, turning his head to look at him, and he'd be doing double takes with. It was a real fun day shooting.
Yeah. So were you in like a green morph suit sort of setup for that one?
No, I was just hidden behind R2. I just, the camera's in front, I'm just ducked down behind it, wiggling it.
Yeah, right.
They didn't use. Kenny Baker was always, billed as R2D2 in the first 6 films. And in episode 2, he was only in one shot. He was only in the shot at the end of the wedding, which we shot in green screen, which happened to be on my birthday. We shot it because that was the last shot of the day. They wrapped, and then they brought out champagne, and because it was the last shot of the pickup shoot.
Yeah.
And it was my birthday. So they said, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap, and it's Don Bies' birthday. Let's everyone sing happy birthday. So that was a cool memory. But so that Kenny was only in that one shot in episode 2, and in episode 3 he wasn't in it at all.
Right.
So anytime you see R2 wiggling around in episode 2 and 3, it's either me right behind him wiggling him and ducked out of camera as best as I can.
Yeah.
Or it's a digital R2, which it does in some cases. So.
Yeah. That's one thing that it's been a while since I've watched it's been quite a while since I watched the original movies, or not the original, sorry, the prequels. And it's just taken back by how much CGI they had in them, and obviously, just because of nature of time, it's definitely it's a pale shade on the CGI for today.
Well, it's interesting because the model shop was incredibly busy on the prequels. So for episodes 1, 2, and 3, we built so many models. It was mainly environments, like I said, Mustafar, Mos Espa, the pod race arena. That was all a model.
Yeah.
And then they added digital creatures or things flying around. So after the fact, but there was a lot of models. As a matter of fact, on episode 3, there were more models in episode 3 than the original trilogy combined. And we had over 100 model makers working on episode 3 at one point. So although there's a lot of digital work that was being done on episode 1, 2, and 3, so much of it was models as well. So that's been
I know there was some. You did have some images of that in here. Oh, this is entertaining. So yeah, you were Boba Fett in one of the special editions.
Yeah, Return of the Jedi special edition. Yeah, I was. If you scroll down the photos there, so that's us rehearsing. So I'm the guy. Go back to that. Oh, there's that one too. So I was one of the Biff. He was the one with the big head playing the instruments.
Playing the instruments, yes, I did see that. Yeah, in the classic scene.
Yeah, and so I was him in the special edition, and then halfway through the day, George decided to add the shot of Boba trying to pick up the girls as a dancing girl. So we went up to the archives at lunchtime. Grabbed the Boba Fett costume, came back, and I put it on and did the shot. So.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I think the element of just those kind of things is like, hey, you're here, you're a body that can act this out. So yeah, and I'm sure it'll be quite quite fun. So here we are on Hoth in this one.
Yeah, that was again for the special edition. That's me at far left, and the guy playing the Wampa is another model maker named Howie Weed, who eventually moved on to the digital world and became a CG artist.
Right.
And the guy with his back to us is Mark Siegel, who actually worked on the original Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, and he was one of the sculptors of the original Slimer, among many other things. And we're just helping Howie get into his position and whatever there. That's George on the right, and Dave Carson was in the middle. Who's
it looks like a hot and awkward costume to
be. That was really bad. And actually, the when we're shooting the special edition, the job of the dance number with the dancers and Bubba picking up the girls, that was a very hot day as well. So we were sweltering in those costumes as well.
Yeah. What did they use for the snow?
Here, I think it's just like a flake, a plastic flake of some kind. There's some wax. I know the main base of the cave is tinfoil, and it's a very heavy gauge foil, and it's put around a wooden frame and crinkled up and stapled on, and then they spray foam on it, and then to make the icicles and stalactites and stalagmites and everything like that are sculpted pieces of foam, and they drip wax onto it. But I think the snow was just a plastic flake of some kind, probably fake snow from the special effects store.
Yeah. One of the things that I sort of picture just from, I guess, everyday life, when you're working places that in any job, you tend to find people that you might go and sit at a bar and have a drink with after work and have a chat and what have you. Could you share, I guess, some stories of occasions perhaps when this sort of thing was happening and you've just had a close call that, it's not quite put, just getting the shot or just getting something together by having to maybe jimmy something up at the last minute? Like, were there many occasions where things were a bit kind of fly by the seat of your pants and afterwards you're probably having a bit of a laugh about it?
Oh, yeah, it's constantly, especially when you're on set, live action stuff. When we're doing the stuff at ILM, we had more time to prepare and there were less of those kinds of things that happened. But when you're on set with actors and, a very tight schedule, you're just kind of making it up a lot of times as it goes along. And, so many times, particularly with R2, it's like we needed to get it through the shot and something wasn't going or wasn't precise enough. We just put it on a cable and pull it through the shot. We did that lots of times. What was really great about working in ILM was there was always somebody that had an answer. There was always somebody that knew how to solve a problem. There was like Lauren Peterson, who was one of the original model makers. Lauren Peterson, Steve Gawley. They were the original model makers from the very first film. They always had a solution to a problem, and if they didn't, somebody else did. So it was an amazing wealth of talent. And we're still all friends to this day. We try to get along. Not in the current situation, but we get together occasionally and talk, and we have a great time. But we're all constantly just making it up. Try to think of anything. Well, at one instance that happened on episode 2, we were shooting the original intention with C-3PO in episode 2 was when you first see him, he's supposed to look like he did in episode 1, which is the skeletal puppet. And the way the puppet was done was it's a Japanese style puppeteering called bunraku, where the puppet sits in front of the puppeteer, and whatever they move, however they move their arms, the puppet does the same thing. So we built that for episode 1 with a different puppeteer. The guy that ran the crew, a guy named Michael Lynch, was going to be the puppeteer for that. On episode 2, they didn't want to bring him to Sydney to shoot it, so I was going to puppeteer it. But I'm taller than Michael and Anthony Daniels as well, so it was going to be a lot of modification, and the puppet's so damn heavy. I'm like, I have to do this. Well, Anthony said, "Can I try puppeteering?" puppeteering it? And I said, certainly. And I said, you're more than welcome to. Would rather you do it. And so he came, when he got to Sydney, we put him in the rig, and he was amazing. He was a natural talent at puppeteering it. It looked totally like C-3PO as a puppet. And it was great. So he continued doing those scenes with the puppet. And then in the course of the story, he gets his skin put on. That's one of those shots that we were showing in the stills.
Yeah.
We were in Tunisia and doing some of the shots with C-3PO as the puppet. We were in the underground area of Mars Homestead, and unfortunately, Tony fell as he was working the puppet. He tripped on something, fell over, and broke the puppet.
Oh my goodness!
And basically broke the legs. And because the legs are attached to the feet, the hips are attached to the actor's hips, and so forth, so on the way up. So we were able to pull him out. He was okay, but the puppet was broken. So we were looking at it, and George said, "Well, can you fix it?" I said, "No, the legs are broken." I said, "Can you shoot it from the waist up?" And George says, "Yeah." So we just cut the legs off.
Yeah.
And they just shot it from the waist up to get the rest of the shots for the day, and that's how we did that.
I don't think I'd like to be the person responsible for breaking something like that.
Well, we fixed it later. But.
Yeah, of course. Now, I had a swag of questions here. I just wanted to try and see if I actually covered these. Let's talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, because these are also movies that I've got sitting up on my bookshelf back from when we used to buy DVDs and Blu-rays, which I don't know. Like, I mean, I think Pinterest is perhaps supposed to be kind of like a digital replacement, but I personally, one of the things that I have been, I guess, sad about, if you will, as we've sort of progressed, is that we don't have that kind of thing going on, which is probably better for the environment. But I always liked the concept of, going to somebody else's place for dinner or a catch up or something, and maybe for the first time, and looking at their bookshelf, and you kind of would get a bit of a feel for, somebody's interest. You might see what CDs they had there or albums, and just that kind of, you might just find out that you both happen to love Twilight or something, which I don't. But mind you, I did read the books. I'll be honest, I read the books, and I even put myself through the pain of watching the movie, because I was just really I love books, and one of the things that books have always had over films, in my opinion, is the ability to share exactly what somebody's thinking, and even sometimes what the other people are thinking. So it's a bit more of a psychological thing. And that book, to me, the first one, is almost all that. And so then when you watch the movie, that's why she's kind of got this blank face, because she's trying to convey all these thoughts that the person was acting. I just thought it was a terrible idea to make that series.
It's so hard to translate successfully. I mean, very few books, I think, have been able to do that.
Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah, so Pirates of the Caribbean, how did that all come about? And can you tell us some stories from that experience?
Yeah, well, so I was, there was, let's see, this was 2002. The people that were making the Matrix sequels, Matrix 2 and 3, decided to set up their own effects unit not far away from ILM, and stole all the ILM model makers for a little bit. And, which is fine, because there wasn't a whole lot going on at ILM at that point. So, I wasn't terribly interested in going and working on the film. We were all a bunch of people I knew, friends of mine and that sort of thing. But, I wasn't particularly interested in going there because, my wife was pregnant with my daughter, and, it was a farther distance away for me to travel to work. And so I turned down the job initially, like in April or something like that. So around June sometime, I get a call from Adam Savage of Mythbusters fame.
Yes.
And he was working on the film. But he called me. He says, I've got this opportunity to go shoot a pilot for a TV series. He says, but I need someone to replace me here. Would you come and replace me for 4 weeks while I go off and do this pilot? I said, sure. So I went for what was 4 weeks of what I thought was going to be 4 weeks of work. It ended up turning into 8 or 9 weeks of work because after Adam shot the pilot for Mythbusters, he came back. We were all laughing. It's like, whoa, what a silly idea. That show will never work.
Right.
I stayed on for 2 more weeks, and then I was itching to come back, to not be as far away from home. And they were going to work on Terminator 3 at ILM, and I was asked to come on to Terminator 3 as a chief model maker. So I said I gave my notice at Matrix, and I came back to ILM. Well, once I got back to ILM, then they said we're not quite ready for Terminator 3 just yet, but they're working on Pirates of the Caribbean. Would you like to come? Would you want to work on that? And so they stuck me with that crew. And it was at that point, it was only 3 people, 4 people working on it at the time, starting to build one of the pirate ships. And I'm watching them build it, and it was very laborious because they took blueprints for a real ship, and they scaled up the drawings, the blueprints, and had them copied onto large pieces of paper, stuck them onto a piece of wood, cut the wood out with jigsaws, and then made all the stations and the bulkheads and attached it to a keel and did this whole thing. And I'm just watching. It's like, gosh, that's really laborious. So I suggested, since we had a digital picture of a digital model of the ships, we could take that and slice it up in a computer, and we could laser cut all those pieces, all those ribs and everything. So I suggested that. We did that with the Black Pearl. That's how we did the ship. That's actually the Dauntless. That's the ship that's in the background. Right. And so I was able to, in about 3-4 weeks, do what these guys were doing. 4 guys were doing in about 4 weeks. So, and so I basically made a kit, a poker kit, and that's I think that's the. I'm not sure what ship that is. Anyway,
there's another one in the background there too.
Yeah, that's the Dauntless. Yeah. So that's how we started doing it, and that's actually the larger scale one in the background that we exploded on part 3.
Right.
So that's how we did it. I started making all the ships that way, and then we had a small team of carpenters myself included, that would assemble them and plank them and build them like real ships. So it was really cool to work on that technology that was traditional boat building in reality. I would just use a little bit of technology. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of one of those things that I've always thought would be quite interesting as well. Like, I really enjoyed doing woodwork and metalwork and stuff like that when I was in high school, and we grew up doing a lot of stuff on the water. So I love, Dad loves the water. That sort of rubbed off on me. Did a lot of water skiing and wakeboarding and other kind of boating things, and I love always been interested in pirates, in those the concept of being on a sailing ship fascinates me, but particularly the concept that so many of them didn't even know how to swim. So, and then add to that they thought the world was flat, and then still deciding to go sail off into the distance to see what was there anyway. With
people will do for money.
you may at one stage just literally tip off the side of the world is pretty crazy. So, how many different sizes of ships did they have?
Well, the Interceptor, which was the ship that gets blown up in the first one, Orlando Bloom's on it. He gets out in the nick of time in the middle of explodes. That's actually right in the center there. I believe that's the Interceptor. Maybe not. Right. Maybe another ship. No, that's That's another ship for R3. That one was a quarter scale, so that was about 17, 18 feet long. And then the Black Pearl was 6 scale, and that was roughly about 17, 18 feet long. And then we built the Dauntless, which was the big battleship that was the Royal Navy ship. And that was 12 scale. That one was smaller. That was probably about 12 feet long.
Yeah.
And then when the Endeavor, which was actually the Dauntless, just repainted for the third film, because it blew up, we built one that was at 6 scale, and then we built the decks of it for a shot of the deck exploding as it's getting closer. We built that at 3rd scale, so that was about 33 feet long, and I think the 6 scale Endeavor was 23 feet long or something like that. It's pretty big.
Right.
So, and then they weren't intending. Well, the Interceptor was always intended to be in the water, and they built a tank behind ILM with a green screen behind it, and that's, I think, some of the shots you see lower down on that screen.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one on the left there in the center.
Yeah.
And so they had wave tanks, and they had lightning flashing and everything at it. And then the Black Pearl, they ended up putting that in the water. They weren't originally intending to put the Black Pearl in the water, but they did. And then the other ships, none of them saw water, so except the ones that did.
So. Yeah. Did you have mixed emotions? I mean, not that you have any choice in the situation, but did you have mixed feelings to spend so long, literally handcrafting elements of something to then just see it get blown to smithereens?
No, not really. I mean, it's kind of cathartic. It's like you're building it for that purpose. So it was, you're prepping from day one. So it's always fun to watch it explode. I've actually got fragments of some of the chips. We collected them afterwards, the little doors and hatches and fragments of the masts and stuff like that. So yeah, it never really bothered me. It's kind of exciting, It's very thrilling to do a exploding shot like that, because I think for the different exploding ones, it might be something like 6 or 8 cameras on it.
Yeah.
And they were shooting on film back then. They weren't shooting it digitally.
Yeah.
So, almost anything can go wrong. So it's very exciting. Everyone's on alert. Yeah. And, you have to get the cameras up to speed because they're running at high speed. And as soon as you start running these cameras at high speed, they could jam. Something could go wrong.
Yeah.
So everyone's got to make sure that they're exposed correctly. The camera's running fine. They're up to speed. Nothing's happening, and then you give the go ahead to blow it, and it's over in an instant. It's the I don't know what they shoot those things at. It was like 120 frames a second. So it goes very quickly, but on film it looks spectacular. So it's always thrilling.
Yeah. Well, and who doesn't love explosions? I don't know. I certainly did.
Yeah.
I think if and hopefully none of them can hear me, but I think of my kids, if I get any sort of inkling that they are wanting to start experimenting with fire or blowing things up, then I just find somebody with a property and actually go and do it properly. Like when we were teenagers, now mind you, it didn't stop us from mucking around doing stuff that was silly ourselves anyway. But I grew up in really small country towns in Australia. But by the time I was a teenager, we're at this place called Bellingen, which is a beautiful part of northern New South Wales. You've got kind of like rainforest half an hour from the coast, and it's just a great place. About 3,000 people, I think, there. But there's lots of room it's easy enough to get on your bike and ride, off into the countryside. and get up to mischief. So there was lots of places we could go and blow up aerosol cans and things like that. But we had this one friend, and and I think his dad like really quite enjoyed it himself. He sort of had this thing where he would, really, they would get punished quite severely if they were ever caught doing something themselves. But he would sometimes help us, set up these things out in their paddock and blow something up. Or we made he made it. We used it. It was a PVC pipe, like rocket launcher, but you put limes in it. So they had this lime tree there, and you would put the lime in this PVC pipe, and it had like a chamber that had a lighter sparker sort of thing. You'd spray aerosol or something in there and screw the cap, and you'd shoot the lime fly out across the face. Just had a great time with that. So
I know somebody did a potato gun like that with compressed air. So.
I imagine a lot of this sort of stuff is just, I guess, the ultimate version of doing that. Now, look, let's have a quick look before we wrap things up at this the trailer that you've also shared. So I'm interested to hear a bit about what you've been doing in more recent times. Clearly, you had the this short film called "Keep the Gaslight Burning." Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the genesis of that project was, so Dave and Lou Elsie are husband and wife team that do makeup effects, and they were the makeup crew, the creature supervisors for episode 3. So we met in Sydney, 2003, I guess it was. And we stayed friends and stayed in touch. And they were in Australia for a while. They're British born, but then they were working in Australia on Farscape, and then episode 3. And then they eventually moved to Los Angeles, and they live in Los Angeles, which is about an 8-hour drive from myself. So we stayed in touch all these years, and we always talked about wanting to do a project together, whether it be working on another film together, doing, helping them. And that I would be doing makeup, but I would be doing something mechanical for them while they were doing makeup. Dave with Rick Baker, you know who Rick Baker is, but
yeah.
8-time Academy Award-winning makeup artist, did American Wolf in London, Coming to America, Michael Jackson Thriller. So Dave and Rick worked together on a movie called The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, and they won the Academy Award for Best Makeup together.
Yeah.
And so Dave and Rick stayed. Are very good friends, and Rick's wife. And so a few years ago, in 2017, we went down to have dinner with them, my wife and I, and Dave and Lou, and we're sitting around talking again, saying, we should really do a project together. And they said, well, I have this script for a short horror film that would be fun to shoot. And my wife and I both said, let's do it. He says, I bet I can ask Rick. I bet he'd be the ghost in it. And I said, cool. And I'd met Rick once or twice before, but I no means sort of acquainted,
Yeah.
And then a friend of theirs, of Dave and Lou and Rick and his wife, is an actress named Marky Post. Now, Marky is not very popular with Australian audiences, but in the United States, there was a TV show called Night Court, which she was on in the 80s. She was also on The Fall Guy with the Majors for where he played a stuntman, and she's continued acting in films and television. She's actually Cameron Diaz's mother in Something About Mary.
Okay.
And they're really good friends with her, and they said, Marky, I bet you would play the old Ricky in it. And it turns out that Marky's daughter is an actress living in New York, and so we had our cast. All of a sudden, we had our cast that evening,
Right.
And 63 days later, we were shooting the film, and we shot it up here in a historic in town I live in a historic home from 1909 or something like that. And we just acquired a crew, especially when they found out people like Rick Baker and the other talent that was working on it. we started getting really a lot of people wanting to help out with it. So we were able to shoot it with a reflect camera with prime lenses, really good prime lens kit, and we got just top notch crew all the way around. And we shot it in 2 days, and then we edited it together. And we had somebody lined up to do the post production and music. He did both of those things, and he became unavailable. So now we were stuck. We needed someone to do some visual effects, which were minor, but there were some digital effects that we needed to put in there. We had a couple things that was fixed too, like we had some modern fixtures. The movie was supposed to not have any electricity in it. And we needed someone to do sound, and we needed someone to do music. So Dave had known, and I know him too, but Dave had just recently talked to Phil Tippett, the effects supervisor, and he called up Phil. He says, "Hey, we've got this short film that needs about a handful of visual effects shots. Would you have anybody you can help with it?" He says, "Yeah, I'll put a couple of my guys on it." And we said, "Oh, how much what's that going to cost?" He said, "I'll just buy him a case of beer. That'll be fine." So that was our effects budget, was a case of beer for
awesome.
our 2 effects men. And then a friend of mine on Facebook was talking about his friend Joe Kramer, who had recently done the makeup and music for one of the Mission Impossible films.
Right.
And I said, "Hey, Kevin," I said, "do you think Joe would be wanting to work on a script horror film?" He said, "I don't know, I'll ask him." And Joe said, "Sure." So then Joe Kramer came on as our composer. So like I said, it was great. I mean, it all came together.
Yeah.
We finally edited together. We finished it in 2018. And then we started sending it out to film festivals, and it won, I think, 4 best picture, best horror film awards. And then we started getting asked to be at some festivals as well too. So it's done its circuit. Now it's on Amazon Prime here in the US and the UK. Unfortunately, not in Australia, just because of the way they do things there. But so it's been great.
Awesome.
We were very proud of it.
Well, let's see if we can watch this trailer. Our fingers crossed that the audio actually comes through. Bear with me. I've been tinkering around because I'm looking to change streaming products, and with that, I've been trying to find my way around lots of different bits and pieces with the audio side of things, which is a bit of a pain because I love film and movie making, and that was the path that I was actually headed down myself until COVID sort of came through and just destroyed my fledgling video production business. So I could learn, things about filmmaking for days, and literally have, but when it comes to the audio side, I really just don't have that much.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, some people they dig it. Like I had a guy who was going to collaborate with me on a thing at one stage. This is going back quite a few years ago now, and he did sound, and so I thought, and he had some interest in possibly maybe doing some video stuff. So I thought he could do video production, but we were creating a YouTube show at the time, and we went and shot one thing, and then after that, he's like, "No, I just don't think this is for me. I'm going to stick to sound." And I was like, couldn't understand it. But anyway, it's good that it's a collaborative effort, isn't it? So let's see if it plays. You tell me if you can hear.
Yeah.
Yep. Beautiful.
If you you can open all 4 to full size.
Very brave for me.
You see it? Or not?
No, it didn't.
Because it's something strange. When I go full size, it seems to disappear for whatever reason. I'll just expand it because I can make it here.
Might want to scroll back to.
How's that?
That's good.
Is that fitting?
Yeah.
All right. We'll scroll back.
You must do something very brave for me. Think about it. 2 minutes of bravery for all of this. Well, what is it you want me to do, Matt? It's a bit of a test. To see if you can do something that I am incapable of. I want you to hold your phone. Part the curtains ever so slightly. Peer down into the street. But I warn you, if you do this thing, your eyes may pop out of your head like ripe grapes, because you will surely see a ghost.
Nice.
Yeah, that was Rick at the end.
Playing the ghost?
Yeah.
Or just his work?
No, he didn't do the makeup on it. Dave designed the makeup. We had several other makeup artists working on it.
Yeah.
Marky, who plays the old lady, Marky doesn't look like that too. She's in a pretty heavy makeup there.
Right.
And there's another character that plays the maid, a cook that's got in the opening scenes. We've done some heavy makeup. Of course, Rick's the most made up because he's this weird guy coming back. But he had a blast. He loved playing ghosts, and he was really into it. So.
Yeah. It's just it's amazing the quality of makeup that people can make. And I mean, if that's a lot of if it's a lot of makeup, they've done a great job on her, because I couldn't pick it. I mean, it's really close as well. It's a close up. Then I couldn't pick anything. Yeah, nothing was jumping out to me that made it look like it wasn't real. No, it's got a nice little setup. Well, now I'm going to have to track that down. I have to find my way to get access to it. So it's just, I guess, a licensing issue with Australia.
It's the way Amazon Prime works. They won't license it. I mean, we're fine with it. They have at it. It's Amazon. It's an Amazon.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find another streaming service to put it on Amazon.
Some other way. Well, who knows if I can succeed with Flicks for Good, that's what I've been focused on for the last 3 months. And that's the goal there, is to launch a streaming service that will be backed by a social enterprise. So essentially, not everybody knows what social enterprises are, but it's similar to a not-for-profit. It's sort of between a for-profit and a not-for-profit. Essentially, the main mandate is that you need to give at least half of your profit to the causes that you say that you actually support. And my goal there is to, through the medium of entertainment that's a universal language, raise money and awareness for different causes and people in need, and have that dictated by the subscribers themselves. So people can kind of say, hey, I'm interested in these different things, and back in the whole thing with relationships with the different charities and not-for-profits, or those who will be willing to partner and find a way to actually get money to them, and then share those stories, so you can try and create a bit of a circle, so people can actually see where their money's going from. I put a lot of time into researching the space and talking to different subject matter experts. It's funny because at first I didn't really have any wild ambitions. I just thought it would be quite small. But the more I started thinking about it, I thought if I got the right people and got enough people behind it and interested in subscribing, there's really no reason why it couldn't compete head to head with the other guys. If you had the same quality of content that you're able to go to market and purchase, or that you're able to commission to be produced, coupled with educational material as well, so that we could share that to the world. That's the ultimate goal, is to distribute it all over the world, translated into different languages, so that anybody anywhere could get access. Make it ad supported, so it's free, and people could watch and maybe find a way to better their situation wherever they are. So it's kind of my little scheme to democratize entertainment and education. But I've been peddling pretty hard. I'm getting close to probably doing the major kind of crowdfunding push. But and then this is really, it's a bit of fun as far as this series goes, Filmmakers, and two, it's a passion project, and it's a great opportunity, to have a chance to talk to someone like yourself. I could talk forever, but not everybody's going to want to watch. I've already gone 15 minutes over what I normally do. I really, really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for sharing your stories with us, and I'll hopefully cross paths with you again some stage down the track.
My pleasure. And your project sounds like a great one. I hope the best of success for you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks, Don. Well, that was a real treat. That was great, absolutely great. This T-shirt's one of those this is one of those jobs where, like Kmart, you guys might not have Kmart in the States, but they're just like a major chain, like Target or whatever, and they're putting out all these vintage shirts, I suppose. So there's people probably wandering around now with Empire Strikes Back T-shirts that maybe have never even seen the movie, but for me, I was like, yes, I'll be having that. So very good, so good. Now, they say you're supposed to have a custom outro for these sorts of things, and I don't know if this fits the basket, but I think I'm just going to run with it anyway. It's kind of one of those, kind of put it out there, and then hopefully somebody who watches, they might know somebody who knows somebody. But if anybody knows Quentin Tarantino, if you end up watching, then I would love to have a chat with you. That's high on the wish list. And also, if anybody can get me access to an original Gonzo puppet, I would like to see that wherever it may be, COVID restrictions willing. All right. Thanks for viewing, everybody who's catching this on the replay, and I'll be uploading some of those other episodes of Filmmaker Fridays just so that content's here as well, and then we'll continue on from here. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Catch you next time.